Welcome to Travel Secrets with me, Tanya Rose, the podcast sharing wisdom for fellow travellers. Each week, I ask my guests to reveal their 6 travel secrets and the holidays and adventures that surround them. I would just like to say thank you to Mason Rose, the sales and communication agency that represents some of the finest hotels around the world, for partnering with Travel Secrets, the podcast. Today, my guest is the wonderful Countess Alexandra Tolstoy, a relation of Leo Tolstoy.
Yep.
Anglo-Russian adventurer, author, TV presenter. She organises the most amazing riding holidays in Kyrgyzstan. I knew I wouldn't say it quite. Presented the BBC series Horse People, which was incredible. And you also have the Tolstoy Edit, which you have interior design things from all over the world that you showcase and sell.
Yeah, kind of folk mostly.
You have and probably are the most adventurous person that I've ever interviewed on this podcast.
Well, I hope I don't let you down.
I am so delighted to have you here. And before we start, your brother, Dimitri, was my son Jake's tutor.
And he was a good one.
And he was a brilliant, and he literally taught him everything. Greek, Latin, history, English, everything. He was just fantastic. So huge shout out to him.
Yeah,
if anyone's looking for a good tutor, I can highly recommend him. So before we go into your travel secrets, perhaps you can tell us a bit about yourself and how travel has impacted you.
So I grew up despite having this Russian heritage, grew up very, very English childhood in rural Somerset. And I don't think I went abroad until I was 14. I think we went to France for a week and really never, ever travelled. But my father introduced me to Victorian literature, and I was just consumed with these, with the Brontes, with Jane Austen, all these. And then I got into French, 19th century literature, and Russian. And I think it sort of created this, this imagination and these ideas of other people. And so although I didn't physically travel, I kind of did in my mind.
The romance of travel.
Yes, definitely the romance. And when I was 18, it was 1992 and the wall had just come down. And my father said to me, right, it's your gap year. You're going to go and live in Moscow for 6 months. And I thought, I didn't really have a choice because I didn't have any money. What was I going to do? All my friends were going to India and I had lovely holidays and Thailand and stuff. And so, but I went with it and it was life-changing. So
Did you speak Russian before you went?
Not a word.
Really?
I literally could say the word butter. That's all I could say.
Really?
And, but it set off. Then I changed to study Russian at Edinburgh and had to go abroad for my 3rd year. And it really...
So you went back to Russia?
Yes. And then back. Russia's been the big love affair of my life. But obviously now, since the war, I haven't been, and it's, devastating. And so I really, really... Well, obviously, I want the war to end. It's the worst thing that's happened. But I hope my children will be able to visit and will be able to get back.
Do they speak Russian?
Yes, they do.
Good.
And I've really made a huge effort for them to feel... I mean, they're much more Russian than I am. To speak Russian, they grew up on Pushkin, on Tolstoy, these lovely fairy tales, and the art and the music and everything. And at first, like all children, they're quite reluctant to be any different from... But now, in their late teens or, mid-teens, they're getting really into the idea of...
And how are you related to Leo Tolstoy?
To Leo, pretty distantly. So my father is the head of the whole Tolstoy family, like the oldest of the oldest branch. And then Leo, we have a kind of common... I think we have a common ancestor in the 17th, 18th century.
And your father is Russian, speaks Russian?
No, so in my family, no one really speaks Russian.
Really?
I was just really went for it.
Well, I can't wait to hear, because you've got so many travel extraordinary stories. So let's get into your travel secrets.
Yeah.
What is the number one destination you think everyone should go to once in their lifetime?
Well, I'm going to have to say, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to have to say Kyrgyzstan. Yeah. And I know not everyone's going to go there, but I'm just going to say why, if they could, they absolutely should. Because I think that Kyrgyzstan is a nomadic country. So when people think about nomads, it's like every day changing that, but that doesn't happen at all. They actually live in a village in the winter, and then they spend the summers up, probably even, in Switzerland, almost the same thing, up in the high alpine pastures. And Kyrgyzstan, of all the places I've been, has really, really kept this incredibly, incredibly rich but yet simple life where they have everything they need and they are the happiest people that I've seen. And I've spent a lot of time there. I've worked with the same shepherds for 25 years, seen them grow, work with their children now. And they've really nailed something that in the West, I feel like we're losing more and more and more of what is happiness and what makes your daily life rewarding and not complicated. And it's being close to nature, it's having a really close community.
And that's where you do your riding
Yeah,
holidays.
so I run these riding trips in 2 different places now. In Kyrgyzstan. So in 1999, that was my first really big adventure. I rode the Silk Road for 9 months with 3 girlfriends.
Incredible.
And we did 3 months on horses and 6 months on camels, I think, yeah.
Incredible.
And so we covered a lot of, we covered 5,000 miles, but I just became fixated with Kyrgyzstan. It was just a sort of Garden of Eden. It has incredible wildflowers. Very, very gentle people. It's also got this amazing history of the Great Game, which I got completely kind of swept up in reading all these stories of these amazing, like Kipling, of these amazing Englishmen who went out and spoke like 5 types of dialect, sort of Turkic dialect, and then had the most amazing adventures. And also, it's where lots of Victorian botanists went and brought back lots of flowers. Oh, really? So actually, lots of it, like I have a little cottage and I love my cottage garden. And so it also has kind of ties like that.
Did you meet your first husband when you did that trek? He was a Cossack, wasn't he?
So, they always call him a Cossack, and no, he's not a Cossack. A Cossack is Russian, and he's Tatar. He is Russian, but he was, he was a show jumper, and so he was one of our guides.
I read a hilarious thing that for your wedding he came in on a horse without a top, and the horse was slipping all over the place.
I think he did have a top on, but it was pretty scary.
Very scary.
Yes, I've made some rash decisions in life.
And when I had Dominic West on the podcast, he was about to come on a trip with you to do
so that. I'm so excited. It's something I've been working on for over a year, because I've now become an official ambassador for Kyrgyzstan, for the government of Kyrgyzstan, or the country. And so this project I've been working on was to get... So Dominic, I think, is a fantastic person. He's interested in the history. He loves riding. Yeah. And he can obviously bring so much attention by doing a travelogue. So we are going to do this amazing 2-week trip, sort of crossing the country on horse. He doesn't know this yet, but he's got to play goat polo. Oh,
I'm sure.
Which is the most
hilarious,
vicious, terrifying game.
Well, you've got to sit on a goat.
No, you're sitting on a horse, but you're playing with the body of a dead goat.
I was going to say, you can't sit on a goat.
No, and they're all stallions, and you can have up to like 500 people playing and sort of all attacking and whipping each other, and they bend right down to the ground like a Cossack and pick up the goat.
He doesn't know that he's doing that yet. So if he's listening, that's going to be one of your adventures, Dominic. Oh, how hilarious! That's brilliant.
But yeah, so I'm just thrilled because I've worked so long with Kyrgyzstan, and now it's really exciting. I've got into a position where I'm advising them on how to develop tourism, because nowadays in the world, that I would say is the really, really, really thorny, bad side of tourism, is how it often is developed in a very wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that you say you're off-grid, basically.
Totally off-grid. Like, they had a project, they said, we're going to get every single bit of Kyrgyzstan with phone reception. I was like, no, you're not. Please, no, you're not. And actually, they did, the Ministry of Tourism, they really got it. Like, that's actually why people come. Yeah.
And where do you stay when you're doing that? Do you stay in tents, or do you stay in your huts?
So I have a whole team who I've worked with for ages, the most amazing cooks, like backup team, and they move the entire camp, and we're in tents. And then we have a big mess tent, and we have tables and chairs and like pretty china.
So they do that when you're riding through?
So it's nice and civilised.
And how good a rider do you need to be?
Not very good.
But proficient.
Proficient. Yeah. Like, my children have done it and they haven't ridden very much. It's more about the adventure, the camping, seeing this just extraordinary scenery. But I feel there are lots of places in the world you can see extraordinary scenery, but it's a combination of the people. And there's this point at the end of our ride where we ride past this incredible waterfall and this little bridge. And so many people have turned to me at exactly that point and say, oh my God, what did we get wrong in our lives? You know, because they've spent a week riding with these 6 amazing guys who are just the most kind and full of joy. You know, they're very, very joyful, happy people. And I hope people go away having learnt and reevaluated. And
well, I'm sure they do, because a lot of your business is word of mouth and people saying how wonderful it is and recommending their friends. So I'm absolutely sure that is the case. What is your most unexpected travel experience?
Well, probably going back to my gap year, actually, that if you said to someone in 1992, are you dreaming of going to Moscow? The answer would be no. It was so grey. It had one restaurant in the entire city, one restaurant, and it was only for officials. It stank of cabbage. Like the moment you landed, it just stank. And, ostensibly everything was wrong. I landed in January. It was minus 30. When you're young, you kind of don't really worry too much, do you, about, or have big expectations. But I did think, my friends were saying, oh, poor you, this is awful. But it was a bit of a punishment because I hadn't done very well in my A-levels. So I'd had to retake them. So I think I didn't have a leg to stand on. But I got there and I lived with this amazing family, a very famous actor, who was very famous playing Sherlock Holmes in Russia. And it was incredible. And so for me, travel, the really important thing is the human interaction, and that's what makes travel. So I lived with this family. Constantly you had all these like artists and poets and actors coming in and out, and I felt really, really fortunate, because it was a sort of sunset of the Soviet Union was a terrible, terrible thing, but it did have this amazing intelligentsia of very, very cultured, creative people, and so I really witnessed that.
Oh, amazing. And did they speak English when you arrived or not?
No.
So you literally were thrown in at the deep end.
And every day I would go across Moscow and have these Russian lessons, and I was really not very diligent. And I think now, I do speak fluent Russian now, but I do think then, like, why didn't I? Anyway.
Because you've got other things that you're thinking about and experiencing, and now you do speak it. So
and actually, do you know, the best thing was there was no phone, obviously no mobile phones, and there weren't even landlines. So to speak to my parents, you had to order a call through the operator. But I didn't speak Russian, so I couldn't order the call. And
so you couldn't phone and say, please let me come home?
No. So my parents never really contacted me. And so I'd walk. I remember walking once to a hotel and sending a fax. And that was the good.
Get me out of here. No, you didn't. I'm sure you didn't.
No, I think I just accepted, like, that's it. I was there. And I did love it.
What is your most overrated travel experience?
So overrated, I'm afraid I'm very opinionated on that, because my life took a very dramatic and different turn when I think I was in my early 30s. And I met the father of my children, who is a Russian oligarch. So he was obviously living in a world of unimaginable wealth. I mean, just crazy. But it was very passionate. I fell very, very in love with him.
This is Putin's banker.
Well, they called him that, yeah. And he had 2 private jets. We had the most amazing yacht. We had 2 other yachts. We had the best house on St. Bart's, this chateau on the south coast of France. And I can honestly say that when I walked away from that, I don't miss one single element of luxury travel, because it's so isolating, And I remember, like, the first time I went on a Ryanair flight after that, I was just so thrilled to be in the airport. You're with people, it's fun, it's like a nice...
And you'd bought your own ticket.
I bought my own ticket. And it's very, very lonely life, I find, and very anonymous. And you don't really get all the stuff that I love about travel is meeting people, having very real experiences, in a real village and remote. And to me, there's nothing charming or interesting.
No, so it's actually the antithesis of what
it really is. It's just a gilded cage of... And actually, I think it's the worst of travel, because, you're creating a lot of pollution and you're not contributing anything, or I suppose jobs, but yeah, I would that. So I do feel very lucky in a way that I had that experience, because I know it's nothing I aspire to, and I don't think you need money to have great travel experiences. You can travel in a
I mean, I've
way.
seen your Netflix documentary about your life then, and it is quite extraordinary. And you were so brave to get out and to escape.
Well, yes.
And take your children and have this new life. And I really take my hat off to you, because you've done an amazing job, and you have got this wonderful, wonderful new business and this real life.
Well, I was very lucky that I'd started the business before, so I could come back to it. And yes, I just feel, and I never know, is life luck or is it? I feel like it's very important to take every opportunity. And the way my travel business started, I was giving a talk at the RGS on the Silk Road trip, and a guy came up to me at the end and said, "Will you take a group of us riding?" And I was just like, "Yeah, sure." And I didn't know where to get the horses, didn't know anything, but I did it, and that's how my business.
So you had done it yourself personally.
Yes.
But you had never taken a
But I'd never done it. No, I hadn't done all those logistics of like organising it all myself, and it's quite a thing. But I've now built this amazing team.
So how long have you been doing that?
So the first commercial one I did was in 2002.
Oh.
But then I had this decade of having children and being shot in the gilded cage. And I came back to it then COVID, so probably 2022.
And how many trips a year do you do?
So this year I've gone a bit bananas, and I think I'm doing 5.
Do you escort them all?
Well, no, I have one wonderful friend who is the other person who's obsessed with Kyrgyzstan as I am, and Malika, my wonderful friend, and she leads one. She did Russian at Oxford and speaks some Turkish, so she's perfect. And then I lead 3. I'm doing a recce in a very, very wild part of the country where I haven't been, which I'm really excited about. And it's out of season, so it'll be very cold, but it's wild and just galloping all day long. And then, so it's a lot of travel and physically quite taxing.
Exhausting.
Yeah.
And what happens when you go? Do you take your children with you, or they're at school?
So they're at school, but I take them in the summer. I especially do a family trip where this year I've got 2 or 3 families and the brother.
The brother?
The brother's coming. And that is really, really fun, because I feel a bit off duty. I'm not really hosting so much.
And you can see new things.
Yeah, and it's just wonderful to be with your children with no phone reception.
Yeah.
It's heaven.
Yeah. I have never been to Kyrgyzstan. However, I did do a riding holiday, and I cannot ride in Switzerland, because we lived in Switzerland. So one summer, our father said, right, we're going on a riding holiday. And actually, it was magical. It was probably pre-mobile phones anyway, but we didn't have any contact with the outside world. Every night we sat around a campfire with a guitar, sang, cooked. It was absolutely wonderful. It really, really was very special. I remember it as one of the best holidays I've ever had.
Oh, well, I hope my children will say that.
Yeah, they will, and I cannot ride. So the fact that I even say that is quite extraordinary. Let's go on to the next travel secret. Food and drink is so important in travel. What do you like eating? Where do you like eating? What's your best meal, your cocktail? Let's just talk about food and travel.
Food, I love food. Yes, and I feel like I love all food. But on my travels, I particularly love Georgian food. Don't know if you've come across Georgian food. It's absolutely delicious. And so it's a lot of vegetables and a lot of like aubergines. I love aubergines. And this amazing kind of cheesy bread pizza type thing. But I also really like English food as well. And I've always made cakes, so I love cakes. But I have to say, because I think food, the really memorable experiences often come, it's about where you are, isn't it? It's about how hungry you are.
Yes.
And I remember I did once go on the most amazing, when I was in my 3rd year abroad living in Moscow, I thought, right, this is it. I've got to travel much more and be more adventurous. So I went with a friend. We got a 17-hour train journey to the Caucasus, to Mount Elbrus, which is like, if it was, there's a debate, is it in Europe or not, but it would be the highest mountain in Europe. And we arrived with nowhere to stay, and all these women just standing with little boards saying, rent a room, rent a room. So we went and rented a room, and we skied with this historic equipment. I think it was like 5th hand from probably Switzerland or something. Yeah.
Tying up your legs.
We weren't very good at skiing, endless accidents. And it said things like, beware of the bears as we were skiing home.
Goodness.
But I do remember we somehow befriended the guides, like they had a little mountain ski school, and they let us stay. They had this amazing hut on the top of the mountain. It was so amazing. We stayed there, and I just remember so distinctly, for some reason there was a German girl staying there, and she cooked this spaghetti with melted cheese, and it was somehow just I can remember it so well now, the most delicious thing.
Probably because you were starving as well.
I think we were starving, and it all felt really exciting
but delicious.
And also at that point, Russian food was absolutely revolting. So it was a bit of a contrast.
Actually, when I had Simon Sebag Montefiore on the podcast, he was talking about Georgia a lot. He loves Georgia.
He and Sebag and I used to eat at a Georgian restaurant in Moscow the whole time.
Really?
Tiflis. Yes.
Did you?
Yes.
He was talking about going to a funeral once and them having this huge banquet. And then he said, where are the bodies of the people that we are, mourning? And they said, oh, underneath the table. And they had eaten this feast with the bodies under the table before they buried them. But he loves Georgia. And
Georgia's incredible. Everything about it. They really savour life. And there are direct flights now with BA.
What is your top insider travel tip or secret?
So I would say, I was thinking about this, I think it's really important to read around wherever you're going. I think you just gain so much more out of it. So, like when I first went on the Silk Road, I was reading all these great game and these different travellers, who in the 19th century travelled, and it added a lot to the experience. And then
before you went,
before and while I was there, and then now, I send my clients a big reading list, and then it's really, and even Flashman is brilliant for Central Asia, and then my clients I find have read more than me, which is really embarrassing. But then things like because I do this sort of crazy travel, I also love to do very repetitive, sweet, sort of more localised things that my children love. Like every year we go to Wales and every year we go to Corfu, and we absolutely love it. We found this like very simple, lovely house, which could be from the Durrells. And I've read them the Durrells, and it's just, in this olive grove, I remember sitting there reading, and my son said, but Mummy, I've seen that tunnel spider. And he went to the tree and showed me, they build these amazing tunnel webs. And I just think it adds so much more. And in fact, I feel like I'm saying all the same books that Dominic said, because I'm also obsessed with The Time of Gifts, which, to travel like that is just such a different experience, isn't it, from just dropping into somewhere without knowing.
Well, I can also imagine being with children in Corfu in a home like that and reading the Durrells. I mean, he's such a great writer. And you can see his childhood, can't you?
Yes,
I mean,
totally.
You absolutely can.
And that's the thing, that even, obviously it's become more touristy Corfu, but you can find always beauty and unspoilt.
Where do you go in Wales?
To the Gower, which is probably not fashionable at all. But we went there as children. I would think the first time I went was 10. And it is protected by the National Trust, so it's very lucky it's hasn't been touched. But I love that it's not fashionable, because we rent the really simplest houses. We sleep like sardines. There's usually not rooms, and my son has to sleep in a tent. But we walk, for 6 hours a day.
Do they have lovely beaches there?
Wonderful beaches that you can't get to with a car, so it's great because there's no one on there.
Yeah.
And we have picnics, and we play stupid games.
My husband grew up in Wales, and he's desperate to go back to Wales. He loves it. He grew up on Pendine Sands, so in Carmarthenshire, and it's where they did the speed race, the Bluebird and all of those things. So it's an amazing beach. But he said there was hardly anyone on those beaches, and he absolutely loves it.
And it's so unpretentious. The only thing about Wales is they have terrible pubs.
Yeah, they don't have good food,
and it's not. You can't really find a cosy. No. So you have to just focus on the family thing.
Family picnic beach.
Yeah, and then we play a lot of card games.
Yeah.
And a lot of...
As long as it's not raining there.
Bickering. Oh no, we had torrential rain last time. But we still managed to have fun. I forced them to walk. And they went surfing.
Yes, good. Again, a nice holiday. Not perhaps as adventurous as going to Kyrgyzstan, but still lovely.
Yeah.
Enjoyed. What is your most poignant travel memory?
I think because I've lived a lot in Russia, lots of memories from there, very poignant, because I'm so devastated about this war, and we now can't, well, not selfishly that I can't go, but just that I can't believe these wonderful people who are just so amazing that this has happened. And, you know, I rode from Turkmenistan to Moscow on a horse. In fact, that was the photo that I've given you, I think.
Oh, great.
I ended up on Red Square on a stallion.
Oh, great. Well, you can tell us about that.
And riding through these really, really remote Siberian villages where it's like you're just stuck in the 19th century. They're wooden. They don't have running water in their houses. They don't have an indoor loo. They just have like a village banyo where you go and have, you know, like a sauna. And these people are the ones who all the men are being sent and killed at the front. And this I find very poignant and sad. And then another element, I suppose, is we used to have these incredible family gatherings at Leo Tolstoy's house. Poignant.
Where is that?
Yes, it's to the south, west of Moscow, near Tula. And amazing, all the Tolstoys from all around the world, so there are probably like 50 of us or something.
Oh, amazing.
And it was wonderful because because during the revolution, everyone had had to flee, and a few stayed and somehow kind of kept their way going there. But it was such a unifying and sort of such a lovely cross.
Do you do that every year or just this once?
We did do it every 2 years. And now we can't, obviously.
No, well, of course you can't at the moment.
So that, I was looking at photos of that. That's also very poignant, really.
Very sad. And actually that takes us nicely into the photo. So you sent a photo, which we'll show. Tell us about that photograph and how that came about.
So after I'd ridden the Silk Road, I just went bananas about, I want to do more and more adventures. So first of all, I went and rode 6 months through Mongolia and Siberia. Just crazy adventures. And then I thought, right, that's not enough. So then I decided to recreate this other journey, which I'd read about, where I think it's in the 30s, a group of Turkmen, there's a very famous horse called the Akhaltake, this beautiful stallion, and they wanted to draw attention to it because it wasn't really being preserved enough. So they decided to ride to Moscow. And it's desert, then it's the Kazakh steppe, and then but actually that was all, it was tough and it was very, very bureaucratic because they now have borders, which they didn't in the Soviet Union. But the most difficult part was when we got about 100 miles from Moscow because it was so urban. And so weird, crazy situations of like riding through petrol stations but we did end up on Red Square, it really felt like a massive achievement.
And the photo is you
in front of St. Basil's,
on this horse that you spent 6 months.
Yeah.
You are so adventurous. It's extraordinary.
No, I feel like now my life's a bit more.
No, I tell you, you are so adventurous. There's no Maldives and lying on a beach for you. It's riding the Silk Route on camels and on horses. It's fantastic.
I do like lying on a beach though.
Well, it's important to do both, isn't it? But I think...
But I don't like one without the other, it's true.
No, exactly. And actually, when you were saying about your life when you were married with the oligarch and what a cage it was and what a prison it was and actually how soulless it was, that you have really brought true life back to yourself.
Totally, yes, and it's true. I wouldn't just go and lie on a beach really in the Maldives. I'd like to do it where... Like I love it in Corfu because we always take a guide around Corfu town and learn so much about the history. We went last time I took them to the Museum of Icons and, they were freaking out, the children. But then when they got there, it's so interesting and they learnt so much.
Do you speak Greek?
No, sadly not.
Turkish?
No,
mind you.
My daughter tried to learn Turkish and I realised my brain's too old now, I think.
Well, you speak Russian and English. Do you speak French?
Well, my children speak French and I can understand, but not sure.
I know a good tutor.
No, I'm tutoring him in Russian.
Are you? Quid pro quo.
Yeah.
Quid pro quo. So before we finish, what is next for you? Where are you going next and what's next in your life plan?
So next, my year is really, really, I feel like I'm quite a spontaneous person, but it's actually very planned because travel is my business. But I'm really excited. I'm going on a quick skiing trip.
Is that just a normal skiing trip?
Yes, it's just normal. But it's with the girl that I rode around Mongolia with, and I haven't seen her properly for 20 years, so it's really nice to catch up. And then I am doing I'm walking a pilgrimage in Yorkshire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I love walking.
You've done the Camino
de Santiago.
Did you do the whole thing?
Yes, I did.
Did you?
Yeah, it was amazing. And I love walking holidays. I adore them. So it's just 3 or 4 days, but...
In Yorkshire?
Yeah. And then I'm doing a walking thing in Wales. So I love local travel as well. And I do a lot now of these, even in London, architectural walks where I go and they have a guide and I learn about.
Is there a company that you can do that through?
So walks.com.
Oh, really? Is that what they're called?
It's absolutely brilliant. You pay 10 quid and I have learnt so much.
And they have amazing guides around different things. That's interesting.
Rick is the best guide.
Oh, fantastic.
So it all started, I did one on the wasteland, which is embarrassing. I hadn't even read it.
Where is the...
So a lot of the wasteland's set in the city.
Right.
And I thought before, God, this is awful, I haven't even read it. And I tried to read it, but obviously you can't read it in one night. So, but he was so amazing because he quoted it, he brought it to life, he explained the whole thing. And it's just wonderful to sit in context. And I love Dickens, so my next one is I'm going to do a Dickens.
Have you done the London Dickens?
No, I haven't yet.
I bet that would be fascinating.
And yes,
and probably read so many Dickens books that you'll be able to really...
Well, I love Dickens, yeah. So
you're a prolific reader as well.
Yes, but now I like reading old favourites. It's a bit like... Do
you listen to Audible books?
Yes, I love them. That I read, yes, and I listen to a lot of The Rest is History.
Oh, yeah.
Like going to visit Paris, and obviously if you know about, the history of the revolution, obviously I took my children to see the Conciergerie, where Marie Antoinette was imprisoned in her last days, and just, it's so obviously so much more interesting if you know what's going on.
Yeah. And when is your trip with Dominic and the TV programme?
So Dominic and I are filming in June.
Fantastic.
And I just found out today, it's very nice, the Kyrgyz have got a film festival in Bishkek.
Oh, wonderful.
So we're going to dip into that in between our...
And when will we see that? Will it be 2026?
No, I hope Christmas.
Oh, wonderful.
25.
And how many parts will that be?
2 1-hour parts.
Oh, wonderful.
So I think it's BBC first and then goes out.
Well, I cannot wait to watch that. I can't wait to see Dominic doing goat polo, which is wonderful. And I'm so delighted to meet you and to have heard all your amazing, amazing travel secrets. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
It's been wonderful.